Hey guys, Jason here. Welcome back to another video here on the channel. Sorry I haven't really uploaded in like 3 weeks. Just been, busy ever since school was started, and we've been already kind of in the groove. So I just haven't really had time to really work on this channel. But I have been starting to work on the Boss Fight album, Volume 2. I've already kind of worked on a couple of the songs. So just a little update on that. But without further ado, let's actually get into today's video. So today's video, is the question of, do you need to be able to read sheet music, or read music to be a good and or successful musician? TLDR, no. For actually a lot of really good, successful musicians, a lot of them don't know how to read actual sheet music. They just write their music by feel or in sound. That's the way that like modern musicians in like the last 50 years have done it. Now let's actually kind of dive into more in depth and let's kind of debate on that. So actually the whole idea that sparked this video was because I'm taking a music theory class, and for the standards I need to be able to actually read music and write sheet music. Which for me, I read Braille music, which I'm not gonna go into in depth right now of like how Braille music actually works and stuff, but that'll be another video. But the whole thing is we need to be able to write and read music. Well, that's like part of it. Now this kind of sparked a debate because, I know how to read music. Like, I know how to read basic Braille music. I know how to read basic sheet music. I know what the different notes and the different pitches are. I always just kind of have trouble with, like, different symbols and stuff. Yeah. So, do you need to be able to write, or do you need to be able to actually read sheet music and to be able to be a good and successful musician? Now, like I said in the TLDR, no, but I'm going to go into more depth, and because it actually really, really depends. When I write my music, I don't write sheet music. I write music based on the feel and the sound. How I think it's supposed to sound and how I think it's supposed to feel is how I'll write the music. Now, here's where I think you should be able to, actually read music. Now, I'm not saying in modern music or in modern musicians. Now, I'm not saying like, oh, well, you shouldn't learn how to read music. If you know how to read sheet music, good for you. That's good for you. Like, if you know how to actually read sheet music, then good on you. But it's not necessary to be able to write good music. I did experiment. I remember on that one live stream with MuseScore trying to write sheet music. So I have kind of experimented with that. Now, I will say I would say maybe an alternate case of maybe when you need to be able to actually read sheet music. And that's when you're writing, that's when you're writing something like an orchestral piece or like a concert band score. Like, if you're writing a whole score, that's necessary. You need to be able to read music. But if you're writing I'm just going to say an example, like a lot of the metal bands that we know today, um, a lot of the biggest metal bands, they don't know how to read music. Like, they don't know how to read actual notation. The thing that they probably know how to read the most, let's just say guitar players, is guitar tabs, not actual sheet music. Now, there are some exceptions for, like, bands that are like prog, or like that are just musically talented like that probably do know how to actually read music. But like a lot of the successful musicians, even in like the rock world, like Eddie Van Halen, and of course like the electronic people, especially the electronic artists, they don't know how to read music. They just work off of loops and what sounds good and what feels good to the listener. And this is where I say, you don't need to necessarily know how to read music, but you need to know how the theory works. Like, you need to know how different pitches sound. You need to know what notes different pitches sound, and different types of rhythms, and how things work in music. And this is, this really helps. So what I recommend you doing, if you don't really know anything about music, is I would recommend like ear training. Just analyzing different music and knowing how it sounds, to know how the music is supposed to work. That'll really help with your musical abilities and your musical talent. Depending on, if you want to be a vocalist, or, you want to do all the instrument, depending on what instrument you have to play. And this is where I'll get into the other exception, is if you are in a concert band, or in a band with, let's say, more than 10 people. That's a traditional like concert band. That's not like a rock band or another band like that. Now, that is when I would say you need to know how to read music, because that's a whole score, and you're not going to have, most likely, well, our teachers here at our school will do this, but for the most part, you will not have recordings. You will not have a recording of your specific part. You will have sheet music of your specific part. So that is the other exception to the rule, is when you should absolutely know how to read music. But if you're like a solo musician, or if you're in like a rock band or a metal band, or whatever band you are in that probably isn't a concert band, that probably, let's say, only has like 4 or 3 to maybe 9 people in it, you're most likely going to be collaborating on rehearsals with these parts. You're going to know how every part is supposed to sound. You don't need to necessarily write it on a page. Now with something like drum parts or something like that, or guitar tabs, then that may help to write certain parts down that are maybe technical, or if you don't have the part lined up, or if you don't have like an audio recording of the part before you're going to make the final recording, then that's where I recommend, maybe it's time to, maybe you have to, write some guitar tabs or whatever. But yeah, that's basically the whole thing of, do you need to be able to read sheet music? And, well, now, I will say, if you do know how to read sheet music, it is probably one of the best ways to learn a part, because you can connect with that music and then connect to the instrument of how that part is specifically going to sound. But with some parts, music on a page sometimes doesn't really describe fully how the part is, how it's supposed to feel in the music. So So, yes, do you need to be able to write music and to be a successful musician? Well, no, but in certain cases, like I mentioned, concert bands, orchestras, or writing scores or composing scores, then yes, you probably do need to know how. But if you're just either doing like music production, or you're just playing music to play music for fun, or whatever you're doing, in most cases, you don't need to be able to actually write music. You need to know how the music theory works. Like, you need to know how the theory works. You need to know how, you need to know like certain chords. If you're playing a single instrument, you need to master that instrument. You need to know about different types of rhythms, different types of beats, different types of song structures, different types of whatever you need to know, different types of genres. Even if you are just creating one genre, you probably should know about different genres, and how they relate to the different song structures and how they're supposed to work. The difference between bright tones, dark tones, maybe even learn about like microtones. You need to know about like all the theory and how it's supposed to work, but you don't necessarily need to be able to actually read sheet music. Now, before we had audio recordings, before we had like recordings and stuff, that's how people wrote their stuff, was just plain old sheet music. Because back then, that's how it worked. But with modern technology and the way that like we've modernized, our technology and how we create music now, and we've modernized it so much that, you could just go on to your digital audio workstation, record something, and then boom. And even if you're not making the final recording, you could just, be like, oh, I'm going to record something and I may want to change this. You don't necessarily have to, write it out on the page. Because our modern technology, our modern system has made it to where, like, you can just play something, record it, and it'll already be in whatever MIDI format you want to export it, blah, blah, blah. Now, I'm not trying to get technical right now, but that's basically how it works. Back then, let's just say if this was like the 17 or 1800s, before recording was a thing, and before records were a thing, and before any of this technology was a thing, we would be having a completely different conversation right now. Because, yes, at that point, it is necessary to be able, if you wanted to master music, you would have to be able to read music, because that's the only way to learn how to play that specific music. But nowadays, technology has evolved so much that it's made all that unnecessary. So there's no reason to learn how to read music. You can play great music without learning how to read music. Now, I'm not necessarily saying don't learn how to read music. If you have the time, or you really want to learn how to read music, then go for it. Learn how to read music. Good for you. Great, you know how to read music. But it's definitely not necessary. Some of the greatest music that I've heard are from people that do not know how to read music. They just play their music by the way that it's supposed to feel, by the way it's supposed to sound, and that's how it comes out. So, do you need to know how to read music? No. Except for those cases that I mentioned, because technology has made it to where you don't know how to read music, that you don't need to know how to read music. And a lot of the great musicians nowadays that we've heard from modern music don't know how. They don't know how to read music. So that's basically my whole argument of Do you need to read music? Do you need to know how to read sheet music to be a successful musician? And so, let me know what you think in the comments. If you liked the video, give a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.